Hi, my name is John Paul Raj, and I'm on a mission to make the learning of math fun. So if you're new to this channel, please do consider subscribing. On this video, we're going to talk about how to use the quadratic formula to solve any quadratic equation. Let's start. The general form for any quadratic equation is given by ax squared plus bx plus a c equal to 0, where a is the coefficient of x squared, b the coefficient of x, and c is the constant term. Once you've written the quadratic equation in this form, because sometimes in the questions, it might be jumbled up, but you need to write it in the standard form. This is also called the standard form or the general form for any quadratic equation. Once you've written it in this form, then the values of x, the roots, the intercepts, the solutions, the zeros, these are all synonyms. Okay, it's given by the quadratic formula, negative b plus or minus under root of b squared minus 4ac, the whole thing divided by 2a. That is called the quadratic formula. Now you might be thinking, why do we need a quadratic formula? We have methods of factoring. Why should we need another formula? Let me write this thing down. This is the quadratic formula. Well, there is a good reason why we need the quadratic formula, because I'm going to tell you a secret, but we're not going to answer that, or we're not going to explore that in this video, okay? You can't use the method of factoring for every quadratic equation. Yeah, it's got limitations. Not every quadratic equation can be factored. So we need alternative methods. The quadratic formula is a bonus, okay? So anyway, let's just take a look at a couple of examples. How to use the quadratic formula, that's going to be the main focus of this video, okay? Let me take the first example is x squared plus a 4x minus 11 equals 0. All right, x squared minus 4x minus 11 is equal to 0. That's our first example. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to say a is 1, b is a 4, and c is a negative 11. Once you've identified a, b, and c, then it's just a matter of putting it into the formula. If you're in the national curriculum, you have to memorize this formula, okay? X is negative b, so that's a negative 4 plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times 1 times a negative 11. The whole thing, remember that's the whole thing, okay? Not just one term, divided by 2 times an a, okay? Now we simplified that expression, negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 16 plus 44, the whole thing divided by 2. Okay, can you guys see my working? And that becomes a negative 4 plus or minus 16, and 44 should be a 60. Square root of this can be further simplified as a negative 4 plus or minus square root of 60 can be written as 2 square root of 15. Because 4 times 15 is a 60, and so 2 root 15 will be 60 and over 2, which can further be simplified as a negative 2 plus or minus under root of 15. Those are the values of x. So the two values of x are basically negative 2 plus square root of 15 or a negative 2 minus square root of 15. Okay. If you are allowed to use your calculator, if you're an igcse or an IB, then you have to work out the root of square root of 15 on your calculator up to 2 decimal places or 3 decimal places. Mostly in igcse and in IB, they ask you to report the answer in 3 SF or 3 significant figures. Make sure you do that and then complete that answer, okay? But if you're in a national curriculum, ISC, ICSC, HSC, then you can leave the answer just like that, negative 2 plus or minus square root of 15, okay? Those are the two values of x. Let's take one more example where the coefficient of x squared is not equal to 1. Let me take one example. Okay, this looks nice. Let's put a line here. This is example 2. And this question is a negative 7x squared minus x plus a 15 equals a 0, okay? I deliberately chose something interesting because I wanted something else in that a. So the value of a is a negative 7, the value of b is a negative 1, and the value of c is 15, okay? We are using the quadratic formula in this video. So x would be equal to a negative b, so it's a negative of a negative 1, okay? Plus or minus under root of b square, so it's a negative 1 square, okay? Be careful how you're using these numbers. Minus 4 times a, which is a negative 7, and then there's a 15 there, okay? The whole thing divided by 2 times a negative 7. So I like to write it down this way so that your teacher can see that you have identified A, B, and C correctly, and you've made the correct substitution into the quadratic formula. Okay, then we can simplify this as 1 plus or minus. This becomes 1, and that should be a plus. 4 and 15 is 60. 60 and 7, sorry, should be a 420, I believe. The whole thing divided by a negative 14. All right. And that further simplifies as 1 plus or minus the square root of 421 over a negative 14. Those are the values of x. The maximum that you can now simplify it as is negative 1 plus square root of 421 over a 14, or a negative 1 minus square root of 421 over a 14. That's the maximum that you can go if you are not allowed to use the calculator. But if you're allowed to use the calculator in igcse or IB, then make sure that you use your calculator according to the required degree of accuracy. Some questions would specify, but overall it's 3SF. So according to 3SF, if you're using the calculator, the answer I had already worked out is going to be negative 1.54, and it's a 1.39. Okay, this is corrected to 3SF. So that is how you use the quadratic formula to solve any quadratic equation. In another video, we will unpack that quadratic formula because there's so much information that's loaded. We just use the quadratic formula to find the value. It just looks like, identifying A, B, and C correctly and putting in those values and finding the answer. So you might think, what is there in the quadratic formula? Well, there is a lot of information that's packed there, and we will see all of that in some other video. All right. I hope to see you in the next one.